What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Fitness for Life podcast. I'm your host, Jackson Lohr, and today I have with me Sarah Smith. Sarah, thank you for joining me today. And Sarah, you're coming to us from Liguria, Italy. Is that right?
Yes. I'm in San
Awesome.
Remo in Liguria. Yes. Ciao.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
Brilliant.
Um, I'm excited to get to hear more of your story. You've shared briefly on your Instagram, and I've kind of perused that. We talked very briefly here, but I'd love to just get started with, you know, your story and how you found fitness. What was that initially like for you, and what led to that? And yeah.
Yeah. What led to me finding fitness was really my upbringing, I guess, which was in health. When I was 11, my mum opened one of the first kind of whole food stores in
Hmm.
the west of Ireland. And so my first job was like bagging up lentils and rice in the back of the shop. And she used to bring me to aerobics classes at the local community centre. I'm from like a small town in Ireland, and so we used to go to those aerobics classes, and I just loved the vibe and the music and all of that. And I had opened my own Whole Food store when I was 21, and I was selling aromatherapy products and vitamins and different things like that. And I closed it down, and I was like, what direction will I go to next?
Hmm.
And so I just thought it would be a good complement to what I was doing and what I'd already been doing. And so I found a classified ad because this is 20 years ago. I guess it wasn't as common to do fitness as a career then in Ireland. And so I found a classified ad for in Dublin City for a course. And I took the bus like 4 hours away and went to an open day. And it was probably my first time ever in an actual proper commercial gym.
Hmm.
When I found the course, and I just thought, why not give it a shot? And so, yeah, I didn't really look back after that 20 years later.
Wow. Yeah. That's that's pretty neat that you were introduced to, very healthy perspective on food early.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't get that. So it's definitely something I'm sure you've pulled lessons from, what your mom taught you, or, that upbringing into your coaching. Is that something you
Yeah.
noticed throughout the years?
Yeah, fully. And especially in the sense of when it just used to baffle me at first when I'd get clients who didn't really know about just what made up food in terms,
Yeah.
not even just in terms of the details of ingredients, but just like, oh, I didn't realize, I don't know, an omelette was made from this, and this. And the foods we ate were quite simple. They were all whole foods, and we had a farm. So I was milking goats and weeding the garden, and we were sowing potatoes and carrots and everything like that. So it was like farm to table that I just thought everyone had, and we didn't have any brand names. Everything was, first of all, from a co-op that my parents had. Everything was in bulk, of Whole Foods. So I never saw the big brand stuff. It was all kind of weird brand stuff from my mum's Whole Food store that
Yeah.
that just wasn't popular. And so with clients, what was great was like being able to teach them some of the basic stuff about eating, and just even living here in Italy, it's the same theme, is that they treat food as a way of life. It's a way of expression of love. It's just such a different thing than it being the enemy, which is so much in the fitness world
Mm.
for a lot of people. So that was great to be able to kind of do that and help them with that, and also to help them with things like health food store tours, because they're like, what the f is all this shit, like in the health food stores. So I kind of knew it inside out. So it was really great to sometimes go with clients in person or look online and just go through, okay, look, this is literally what lentils are, or this is what
Hmm.
some of the basic whole foods are. So that was it. I loved doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's definitely something I take for granted, is knowing, like, okay, this is, these are good protein sources and these are good carb sources. And it's something, you do it long enough, and it becomes second nature. And that's what we want for clients and for really everyone. Like everyone should know what they're putting in their body. But I think we often take it for granted. I know I do. That's just things that I'm constantly learning or educating myself or exposing myself to. And so that's neat that I think what's really neat is doing like a walkthrough in a store. I'm sure that was a fun experience to get people to like see that moment when it actually clicks for them.
Yeah.
That
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And just for them to not feel afraid or just, be looking at all the stuff like, what is this? And then you're
yeah.
just reverting back to, a lot of processed foods in the supermarket. And so it was good to empower them to be like, no, literally, these are just milk from nuts. Okay, it's not a big thing, when it came to that. And this was kind of a good few years ago as well, so it wasn't as mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, especially in Ireland, but then it started to become like that. Those products were available in the supermarkets,
Yeah.
so that helped clients as well. But before that, they'd have to seek out the local kind of whole food store or drive to one.
Yeah. So in on one hand, it's good that those are more readily available, but on the other hand, it's harder to know exactly what's been done or what it, if it's a good source or not. So that is, it's interesting to see the dichotomy there. Because now you have to really, I feel like people have to be every year it gets harder and harder to be a good label reader, no matter where you're at.
Yeah, especially because they make it so small, the writing, and then they make it like hidden, and then they make it like you have to do so much maths. And so I used to just really work on that with clients. And also, I think that within the whole food industry itself, there's a lot of shit there that is posing as healthy because it's gluten free, it's wheat free, it's dairy free. And my mum taught me so much about just sticking to your principles of what your vision is, which is helping people to eat better. And no matter what the profit margin on some of those foods that came in from new suppliers, she was just like, this is crap. Like, I'm not selling this.
Yeah.
And the same with supplements, because supplements started to really take over. And she got so many offers from big supplement companies and the sports nutrition companies to use up a lot of the square footage with those types of supplements and products, and they would make such a bigger profit margin than some lentils or something like that. But she taught me a lot about business, about sticking to your vision for your customers.
Yeah, supplements is a big one, especially so here in the States, not a regulated business. In terms of like the Food and Drug Administration won't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And so there are organizations that have kind of stepped in to try and do a little bit more of that, which is great. But trying to get my clients are mostly 55 and up, trying to get them to understand like, hey, just because you see something on a label when it comes to supplements doesn't mean that's exactly what's in it. And yeah, I can certainly see. I mean, when you white label supplements, the profit margins can be pretty nice and attractive. But that's definitely good to hear that you are getting really good integrity-led business strategy from an early age. Like that's something that's really unique to see as a kid. Growing up, like, hey, this is you stick to your guns. You don't let the money get in the way of you serving your people well.
Sometimes my mum would sell customers nothing. They'd come in and she'd say, you literally need to drink water, eat some vegetables. Like,
wow.
You don't. There's nothing I can give you here. And I used to be baffled, and I'd just be listening and soaking everything up as an 11-year-old. But she was always and still is, and she has 2 stores now.
Nice.
And she has an online store, and she has, I think, 10, maybe 20 staff, and that's still her principle is you don't have to sell people something when they come in. You do need to really listen to what it is that they are saying and really see what it is that they actually need. So it's a really good principles to work off.
Yeah, absolutely. Staying with kind of the avenue of food, you had mentioned your own experiences with emotional eating when you were younger. Can you share kind of what that was like for you and how how it came about and what was the outcome? How did you move past it and go educate yourself and get out of that place?
Yeah. Um, yeah, I was in a really like unhappy relationship with a guy that was just really putting me down all the time and
Mm,
used to, you know, control me a lot. And I just turned to sugar
mm,
because being brought up really in a really healthy way, the sugar and the branded stuff and the takeaways, because also we're from a really small place up the mountain where there was only maybe like a burger place 5 kilometers away.
yeah.
That food had a really big allure to me. The takeaways and the fast food and the convenience food. Like when I left my parents' house and I moved away and then I moved in with that guy. So it was like I was so unhappy and I was hiding it. I was hiding the kind of verbal abuse really each day, and I was feeding myself with sugar for love really,
Mm,
and it would give me a little bit of a hit, and then I started to slowly balloon and gain weight. And I've got 3 brothers and a sister, and we're all quite tall and lean, and so it was really obvious that this isn't my natural body shape, and it was before I found fitness, so I could hide it and everything, but yeah, I remember just feeling so like, wow, I've definitely gained weight. I mean, I was never into weighing scales. We just weren't brought up with that stuff around us, or diets or any of that really. The magazines with the celebrities, that just wasn't around us. Like my parents were really alternative. So, but I knew from my clothes, I was like, wow, this is getting out of control. And so, cut a long story short, 7 years later, I managed to get a way out, and I disentangled myself,
mm,
and I basically just was like, right, I'm going to find fitness classes like my mom used to bring me to, and I just started doing like aerobics classes, and it was not long after that I found the advertisement in the newspaper, and I think that was part of it. Was I was like, I'm going to take this to another level and get really strong and really fit, because also he put me down so much that I think it really killed my spirit, that
mm,
I just I spoke differently, I held myself differently, I really lost myself in that relationship. And so when I found fitness, I just fell in love again. So it was really cool, and it didn't take a long time. I never actually weighed myself through the process to know like how much did I lose, how much did I gain. I just based it on a feeling of like, get strong,
yeah.
get healthy, like really love yourself, take care of yourself, and then slowly and slowly, not only did the weight come off, but I got ripped, So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, reinvent myself.
Yeah. And that was a lot of focus on, I'm sure, slowing down that pattern of emotional eating, but you replaced it with, hey, I'm really going to focus on making myself feel good and
Yes.
doing something that feels really, really good to me and feels empowering.
Hmm.
And that makes all those other things that don't make me feel good, that's less attractive. Is that fair to
Yeah,
say?
that's exactly it. I just thought I'd remove the shit that wasn't making me feel good and just add in the stuff that was. And I slowly got more social, because he'd really isolated me as well,
Mm,
from friends, from family. So I did like a stand-up comedy course.
nice.
Yeah, when I qualified, I moved to Australia, and then I got a job in a health food store there and in a personal training gym, and another gym. And yeah, like over there, the lifestyle is so into fitness. So it was like, yes, because in Ireland at that time, it wasn't
Yeah.
as much as it is now, especially not for women with weightlifting. Like I often was the only woman in the weights area. So I love it now when I go in and I see just like loads of women, all
Yeah.
the time. But like 20 years ago, 18 years ago, it wasn't that way. So Australia gave me a real taste for that as well, and really got my whole spirit back, and back to who I really was. So
Yeah.
it was awesome.
That's really cool. When did you find kettlebells?
Yes. So on that journey, I found kettlebells. It would have been probably 10 years later, like after I qualified.
Okay.
And I had a client who was a nun. She was in the convent. She was a nun, and she was an amazing woman, and she was a really good client of mine. And she'd said, "Look, I used to go to a different personal trainer, and he's leaving for the UK to train the English rugby team. He's a strength and conditioning coach." And she said, "I think he's got something you'd be really interested in, and they're called kettlebells." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know, like not the fitness fad, you know." And she said, "Just come with me to his studio. He's selling like a website. He's selling all his kettlebells, like the whole thing. And they hadn't hit my city, Galway, yet, which is in the west of Ireland." So I was like, "Okay, I'll go." And yeah, basically I met him and just saw them and were like, "Yeah, I think this could be a thing." And I bought the web domain galwaykettlebells.com, and I started it in my sitting room, where I was training clients. I just started a small kettlebell club,
Nice.
and yeah, like 5, 6 people. And then it just blew up. Like it was just like I had a wait list. I I moved from the sitting room to open a really big gym. I started to get like big names from the America, like Steve Cotter, that type of thing, came over
Mm.
to train my people. And yeah, I just took over the city I was in with kettlebells. I was like, boy, kettlebells, and just everything I did. I just niched into just kettlebells. Like I didn't brand myself as anything else. It was just like kettlebells, kettlebells, kettlebells. Um, and yeah, I fell in love with them. And then at a strongman competition, I went to a strongman competition in Limerick, and I was selling fitness courses. I was working in the university
Mm.
selling personal training courses, with iTech, and I had a stand at it. And that's the first time I saw a competition grade kettlebell. I was like, "What the hell are they?" And that's when I met my coach, then, who would be my coach for 8 years in the kettlebell sport. And I fell in love with the sport. But I did the other style first, like the strong first style.
Yeah.
I did a load of those courses, and then I did like level 1, 2, 3, and all the other style, the kettlebell sports style, and I became a kettlebell judge. I set up a whole association in Ireland. We held the World Championships in Dublin. Can't remember what year it was, but yeah, we really took it to another level.
Yeah. Absolutely. For those listening who don't know,
Mm-hmm.
what at a kettlebell competition, what sort of lifts, events are you competing in, and what does that look like?
Yeah, there's 3 lifts. So there is snatch, there's jerk, and there's long cycle, which is, I think, like clean and jerk is what a lot of people call it. But I'm going by the real Russian like
Yeah.
sport. Yeah, I've competed in Russia, and they call it Girovoy sport. And so they're the 3 disciplines. And traditionally, you would have to do a 10-minute set. And for females, you can only switch hands once. So you have a judge in front of you. You're lifting for 10 minutes, and when you choose to switch is up to you. So if you switched on minute 3 on the left arm, like you're going to be doing 7 minutes on the right arm. But I guess part of the challenge is lasting the 10 minutes. So some people, their grip will go if they haven't done grip work. It will just drop on them.
Yeah.
If their technique is no good and they haven't worked on their hand insertion, they just won't last the time. If they go for the hard style technique, they won't last like more than a couple of minutes, because it's a completely different style of breathing, of swinging, of how you hold the kettlebell. So at the competitions, you are in a weight category. So it's a weight category sport, and you're competing against others in the same weight category and the same kettlebell size as you, kettlebell weight. And
Yeah.
then you have a judge in front of you, with the machine putting up your reps so you can see all the reps as well.
Nice.
Yeah, and then men generally lift with two kettlebells, not for snatch, just for jerk and long cycle.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's changed since, in that they've done several hybrid mixes where women can also lift with 2. Like I've competed with 2 as well, or you can do 5-minute competitions. I held some 5-minute competitions in Galway, so it's kind of, it's changing as anything does. It changes and evolves. But the real strict Russian kettlebell lifting is at 10 minutes.
Yeah. Cool. I I think that's something that is pretty unique in terms of the competition. I mean, you always have, you know, very there's so many different types of competitions that people can get into now. I mean, you've got
Mhm.
kettlebells, you've got the Highland Games, you've got strongman,
Mhm.
bodybuilding, powerlifting, weightlifting. Like, there's so
Mhm.
many different fitness events.
Yeah.
High Rocks is growing really
Yeah.
a lot right now. So many different events. And I think it's really cool just how different people fall into, the thing that they really enjoy. I'm still
Yeah.
kind of looking for that thing.
Yeah, I never thought I was never in sport. Like in Ireland, the traditional sport is hurling,
Mhm.
and I never got into it at all. I never did any sport at all. I just wasn't like at school. I just wasn't really, on for it. And so I was shocked myself when I went into it. And when I went from amateur to professional, there was only a couple of females in Ireland that went to professional because it's lifting the 24 kilo for 10 minutes. But the thing I loved the most about the sport was the fact that it's so inclusive. So it includes juniors, and there's a lifter called Nancy Flexman from Limerick, and she is in her 70s. And
Oh
so
wow.
there's people, yeah, there's just people of all ages at it, and that's what I absolutely love is going to the competitions and looking at the juniors and the youths, the adults, and then the veterans as well.
Yeah.
So it's quite inclusive.
Yeah, that's great. So along this line, there and relatively recently, um, you've been battling a shoulder injury or a shoulder that's been frozen shoulder. That's the best way to describe it. When slash how did that come along, and what was the feeling like as that was, I'm sure, impacting your performance? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that happened just actually last year. So
Okay.
I never had any specific injuries when I was kettlebell lifting, which is mad because most people really do.
Yeah.
I did nearly break my toe once when I dropped a 20 kilo on my big toe and the toenail broke off. That was excruciatingly painful.
Yeah.
But I actually don't know. I still don't know. So I've been to the physio for over a year now. I've been getting all sorts of checks on it, like ultrasounds, X-rays, um, that really loud, I don't know what it is, machine, getting that done, and all that. And so it started out that it was meant to be calcifications,
Hmm.
like calcifications that built up, and then it was like, no, it's actually frozen shoulder. And so I think possibly it's to do with the kettlebell lifting because I am left-handed, and my left hand was always a lot stronger than my right arm. And then I started really working on my right arm to try to even that out, and I stopped competing for a couple of years. Like I haven't competed properly in I don't know, maybe 5 years or so. And I took up powerlifting. So
Hmm.
I joined the local powerlifting club in the south of France near Monaco, and I've been competing in some powerlifting just to give it a go.
Yeah.
Again, I didn't get injured. I had no injuries. So this was like a gradual thing where I joined a small gym in Bordighera in Italy, and I was doing like landmines, and I just started to feel something
Hmm.
painful. But I just ignored it. I was that dipshit. I was just like, it'll go away. And then it just got excruciatingly painful to the point where I couldn't sleep on it. I couldn't like lift anything. I couldn't open a door. I couldn't put on my bra. Like it was so painful.
Hmm.
And I'd never experienced an injury really in my life. So I was like, wow, like my mood went right down because I couldn't lift weights. I just was like running, walking, doing what I could. Um, but I was just determined to to get better. So
Yeah.
I just invested that time and money in the physio. I still go to him now every second week, and I still can't lift fully overhead with this arm, but I am getting there, and I am back at the gym.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I have utmost empathy and sympathy for anyone that is struggling with, any type of injury, obviously. But frozen shoulder is a bitch, I have to say. Yeah.
Yes. And I find, just in my experience working with working with clients who are having shoulder issues, shoulder tends to be some of the most complex, just because there's so much that goes into the shoulder and attaches right in the same area, between, you've got like 3 or 4 joints going on right in the same area, the ribs and the scapula all coming together, and there's so many muscles that are also making their attachment, pulling on in different directions. It's
Yeah.
very difficult to identify the problem
Yes.
and to find something that you can start at with a baseline to then move back up, and to work from. So shoulder in particular are frustrating injuries to deal with, as I'm sure you know very well at this point.
Yeah, I'm just so grateful, to be back lifting again. And I'm doing Andrew Coates's program on week 13 of
Yeah.
his, and starting a new round next week. Like, massive shout out to Andrew. Like, his program is amazing, and he's so attentive in the group of other women, and that's what really kept me going. Was I had made one attempt at his program, and then it started to get really bad, and then I'd finished it and didn't join the next round, and then I had a gap of nearly a year. At that time, it was with Bailey, who was doing it with him. She's awesome as well.
Yep. Bailey
Yeah,
Lau. Yep.
yeah, she's amazing. Her lip syncing skills are second to none. But yeah, like, I just love it in his group, because it's so versatile, and a lot of the women are posting up and saying, "Oh man, like, I've only done 2 sessions this week," or like, "I had X, Y, and Z happening," and so it's really different to go in as someone who's just like in, not with other personal trainers and athletes. Like, that was the massive shift for me, was ego death, really, was to go from an elite athlete, to, right, I'm signing up to a program, and I'm like in the program, and I've always followed, obviously, my coach's programs, but
Yeah.
this is a totally different experience to not be lifting for a competition, for some, big thing. And it's really interesting to do that.
What do you feel like you've learned through that process of having to kind of suppress your ego and, swallow your pride a little bit and come back down really to the place where you started? And
Yeah.
again, is very similar area.
Yeah, great question, and I'll brief it down, because I could go on, and I won't bore our listeners to tears. But I think it's a really deep internal journey and lesson on, like, why do you need to be elite? Why do you need to be the best? Why do you need to have to stand out? Why does it have to be that level? Yeah, and it's great to get to a high level. There is absolutely nothing wrong with getting to a high level, aiming high, by going for it. I'm all for that. But that's what I kind of went through, was like, why do you feel weird about posting? Because they're all posting their videos. And I'm like, why do I feel weird about posting what I would call like a non-heavy squat video for Andrew to look at, And why did it take me so long to record that? And so I did a lot of journaling, and a lot of just sitting with it, and sitting with what's the problem, Sarah, with that? Like, what is your problem? And it was just interesting to just actually put it to bed and go, it's just totally fine to just be you and do this for your general health, and because you feel good, and because there's so many benefits to it, not for competing or to be the best,
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think it's something everybody at some point has to go through, something like that. Or if you're ambitious in any way, some people aren't very ambitious. They just want to, get in, get out, do their thing. You're clearly, very ambitious about at least competition, right? And what you want to do there. And that's anyone with any degree of that has to, at some point, swallow their pride, because, you're not going to be the best at some point. Time's going to get us all. You can still set records in your 60s, but beyond that, you might, might have to let the young bucks do it at some point. Speaking myself as somebody, or 20-something-year-old who coaches people in their 50s and up. Something we all will have to see at some point. But what I love is it never has to stop. Like, you can always pursue what's can I be a little bit better than yesterday? Sure, injuries happen, things happen. If you're still working, can my effort be better than yesterday? I think that's the thing, is the effort it took to seek out, the physio, the effort it took to, to actually put the weights down at one point, and the mental and emotional effort to say, I need to stop for a second and take stock of what's happening, because if I don't, now I'm going to end up in a way worse situation. I'm sure you can testify to what that feeling was like, of, hey, having to pause, press pause on the competition for a moment and say, this is not what I'm able to do.
100%. And I also see it as a gift, because it helps my empathy for any client, or person that I know who's gone through that, or gone through what I have. And it could be in many different shapes and forms. It doesn't have to be to do with sport and to do with lifting, but it can be that thing of practicing what I preach, and what I preached for so many years with my clients, which is like, oh, so you can't do the kettlebells, right? Well, you can control your sleep, you can control how you're thinking, you can control what you're eating. And they're like, yeah, thanks, Sarah, what bullshit, And so I'm like, but Sarah, don't be full of shit. Like, you actually have a list. I journal the things I could work on for myself, even if it wasn't lifting. And I'd even visualize myself lifting and myself warming up, because I'd read some sports psychology book about the power of like visualizing, and athletes that were injured and they didn't like recover better, but they had a recovery from them imagining themselves being well. So I was really trying to work on my internals of that, like, no, my body is getting better, my shoulder is getting better, and all of those things. So that was also quite a gift, really, because I will never just dismiss somebody that's just like, yeah, I've got a bit of a bad shoulder. You know, the way if you haven't had it yourself, you can be a bit like, oh, yeah. But now I'm like, right, okay. I feel you, so.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I, about a little over a year ago, I sliced 3 tendons in this finger, and you can see it still doesn't straighten. That's as straight as it goes.
How did that happen?
Poor use of a knife in the kitchen. I was cutting an avocado and cutting it in my hand. So.
Yes, but there's something about an avocado that is alluring to do that.
It is. And my wife jokes that she's to blame because she taught me how to cut an avocado. She worked at Chipotle. It's very well known in the States.
Yes.
I don't know. Do you have them in Europe at the moment? I don't know if they are.
I haven't seen them in Italy or Ireland, but we probably have something kind of similar. I know I've seen it in films and stuff.
So she worked there for a brief time, and they do everything fresh. So it's a really great option in terms of fast food. They cook everything fresh in the morning. She was on the prep team, and so she was, taught that's how you get the seed out of the avocado. And they have professional cut gloves. Well, I don't.
That's the difference.
Yeah. So I don't. So anyways, that turned into a year where, well, I'd say 11 months of recovery, where I couldn't grip how I wanted. I still can't really grip how I want. But I went from setting 2 weeks prior to that, I set an all-time personal record for my weightlifting, and I was really seeing a lot of progress, and then stopped in my tracks.
That is so frustrating.
Yeah, and it I find it's certainly a humbling experience, having to kind of eat that pride and say, like, okay, I know what my body's capable of, but at the moment that's not reality. And I think you hit it spot on with the empathy portion of things, because a lot of the clients that I serve, that I had just really started to serve more of, at that time, people who had surgeries, or people who may have needed surgeries, or people who are trying to prevent surgery. And that was valuable for me to go through, to understand, like, okay, here's where you're at in this headspace. You know you're capable, or your body was once capable of this thing, and right now it's not, and that's really frustrating. And so, yeah, I definitely gained a great deal of empathy and understanding for people going through something similar.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
the frustration of that for you also must have been that if you thought you may have got an injury, it would be from weightlifting, not from like a knife cutting an avocado. Like, you know what I mean? If you were ever to, not that we're like willing these things on, but you're like, well,
yeah,
if I get injured, like, it's definitely going to be from weightlifting. And it's like, it's going to
right.
be from a knife from an
Yep.
avocado.
Yeah. So there's a I like to joke. There's a built-in lesson for my son one day when we talk about knife safety. It's like, hey, look at dad's finger doesn't exactly do what it needs to. So here's a lesson for you. Use a cutting board. But Sarah, we're coming up on the time that I want to be at. I want to be respectful of your time and our audience. Is there anything we haven't covered that you, in your many years of coaching experience and competing experience, and just the wisdom you learned from your mom, is there anything you feel like we haven't covered that would be valuable for audience to hear?
I think, I know this is talked about so much, but I think just the power of the small daily habits and their consistency, which is where I'm at now, because you'd asked me before we hit record about the trainings that I was doing, and it was
Yeah.
6 days a week. It was like ultra intense. My warm ups were 30 minutes. And to warm up, you're going through an 8 kilo, a 10, a 12, a 14, and a 16 first before you even start lifting. And so for the audience listening, I'd say that just do not like underestimate the longevity that there is in the small daily habits versus trying to do dramatic things sporadically and then not actually lasting, and then discounting what actually the small daily habits can do, whether that's to do with your physical activity, your mindset, how you're talking to yourself, how you're thinking, what you're reading, or your lifestyle habits of your sleep and your food. Is, I think sometimes if we get stuck or we plateau, we can be so tempted to do something dramatic, or just be like, I should be, I don't know, lifting heavier or more hardcore or doing this more often. It's like, no, 3 times a week or whatever it is that you're managing. And the simple things with food is enough. If you can see yourself doing that in 5 and 6 years' time, then you're onto a good thing, because what I was doing wouldn't it be sustainable for well, I did it for 8 years, but it wouldn't be sustainable at my age now for like another 5 years' time.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. It's a good reminder. No matter how much it's said, I think we can say things over and over again, and it's still valuable. So I think especially that, and recognizing like the power of small habits will never. I feel like we'll never get to a place where it's overstated, because it is that powerful.
And
So
just like doing something, if you're in a situation where you feel really stuck, it's like even just a simple glass of water, like even just a stretch, just some little thing, instead of letting it escalate into a habit that's become a habit of doing like sweet effort. I think that's a dangerous, an unhappy place to be at, because then you get spirals down into negative thinking, and then your confidence goes low. Then it becomes nearly your identity, that it's like, I don't do that anymore. I don't exercise or eat healthy anymore. And that's what I learned from that shoulder injury anyway, is like, no, Sarah, like the small things matter that you do consistently.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really, really appreciate your time. If people are looking for you, where can they find you online?
Yeah, you could find me on the gram, on Instagram, is Sarah Smith Coach. So it's Sarah with a H, Sarah Smith Coach. You could find me there on Instagram, will probably be the best place. And I'm really open to shoot me a message, ask me any questions, anything like that, anytime. I'd always get back, and I'd love to hear from anyone.
All right. Well, thank you again for coming on. I had a great time.
Thank you. Me too.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. For those listening at home, this has been Jackson Lohr and Sarah Smith. Thanks for listening to the Fitness for Life podcast, and we will see you guys next time.